Hey there everyone, it's Joe from Ainslie's Gold Silver Standard Insights, brought to you by goldsilverstandard.com and ainslieBullion.com.au. Today's topic is Director Identification Number, DIN, Chaos and Confusion as November 30 deadline passes. Now that's posted on the Ainslie website. I'll put a link below for you to follow along. Of course, we have Chris Tipper here to break down the morning's news. And joining Chris today, we welcome back Cass Smith from Freedom Financial Solutions. As always, nothing Cass says here today can be constituted as financial advice, but you always know that. So without further ado, Chris and Cass, over to you.
Thanks, Joe. Cass Smith from Freedom Financial Solutions, FFS, has been a viewer favourite of ours on Insights this year with a no-nonsense approach to financial education, particularly around getting gold and silver into your self-managed super fund. You can find Cass online at freedomffs.com.au, but today we're fortunate to welcome her back again onto the program to discuss another issue that has been stirring some controversy, director identification numbers. Cass is here today to break down some of the issues and provide her signature level-headed practical advice. So welcome back, Cass.
Thanks, Chris.
So can you just give us a little bit of a background? Because we put out the article today with what you'd sent to us, sort of that background information. So can you just give us sort of that bigger picture overview of what's going on here and why it's controversial?
I think it's controversial because for quite a few reasons. Firstly, it seemed to just appear out of nowhere. Like normally in the financial world, we see legislation being drafted and tabled and discussed, but this one just seemed to, I've tried to research the background, I can't find anything. It just seemed to just appear out of nowhere. The 16-digit number that they want you to have has a 3-digit code at the beginning, which is for Australia. Mm-hmm. And a little bit of research I've been doing is that they've just done the same thing in the UK. I haven't had a chance to check the other countries yet, but it's definitely an international number. And there's $1 million fine if you don't comply, which is, I've never seen anything like that in the history of the financial world before. So,
and that sort of caught me off, like as a person who needed that originally. I thought that was quite massive. Like I thought, oh, I better jump onto that. But it's probably similar to what you're talking about. I didn't really know a whole lot about that when it first came out. It just out of nowhere appeared, oh, this is something that you need to do.
Yeah, the other part of the controversy is that there's been no real communication from the government. Right. They have all of the directors on their ASIC portal. They could very simply press a button and send a letter to every single director, but there was no communication. Yep. It's only the accountants, and even we weren't communicated with. When we found out about it, we then started proactively talking to our clients, because of the $1 million fine. Mm. But yeah, there's been nothing from the government to try and notify people about this, yet there's $1 million fine tagged onto it. There's a lot of things about it that don't really make sense.
Yeah, right. So that's probably explains why there's controversy around it, because people are not really sure what it is and haven't been communicated with. But you go on in the article to talk a little bit about why it's not necessarily what people are arguing it is online. Can you give us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I started speaking out about it when I started seeing some particular social media gurus that were doing a lot of things, I think, for clickbait. They were really hamming it up and calling it the digital identity. So they were literally reading the legislation and interposing the words digital identity over the top of directors' identification number. And that's just completely incorrect. It's misleading. It was fear-mongering. And I've since found out that the digital identity, there's a whole government website for it, digitalidentity.gov.au. Mm-hmm. It's right there. It's in our face. And on that website, it has a picture that explains the digital identity. And it clearly shows that they're planning to link up 100 plus services to the digital identity. So that is far more intrusive and really the sort of space a lot of us don't want to go into, with the digital identity linking up everything in your life to one identity. We don't want that. The director's identification number, on the other hand, is just one more number. So yes, it's a surprise, it's intrusive, it's $1 million fine, but it is just one more number, like a Medicare card, like your driver's license, like your passport. Yep. A lot of us still have those numbers. Some people have thrown all those numbers out, good on them, but I personally like to have my driver's license number when I'm driving on the road. I'm keeping my passport for travel. I'm keeping my Medicare card. I like cheap medical services. We just have to pick our battles, and there are some really good reasons why people should keep the company structure and therefore get the director's identification number.
And that's probably the part that struck me most from what you'd written there, because exactly what you just said, there's a lot of people who will feel, well, I don't want this, but like you said, you need a passport, you need a license, you need all these different things to participate in society, whether you like it or not. But people who are choosing not to do this, and I know from some of what you were saying, some of the advice was destructure yourself from a company, and that seems very dangerous.
Yeah, very dangerous without proper advice. There's reasons for a company. One is the reduced tax, 20% less tax. That's a big issue for a lot of people. But I think even the bigger one is the limited liability, is that if you're running a company, running a business through a company, you're protected. Your personal assets are protected. That's the number one reason accountants recommend a company structure. Because if you're running a business and you get a lawsuit from a client or an employee, or more commonly these days after COVID, with all the lockdowns, a lot of businesses went bankrupt because they couldn't afford their rent. So if you're in a company structure and the company goes, it's called into insolvency, you can literally just walk away from the company unscathed personally. Instead, if you're doing that as a sole trader, like these gurus are suggesting, you're opening your whole personal liability. You could lose your house and all your other assets if something goes wrong.
A bad business decision or something outside of your control, because certainly in that COVID case, it wasn't necessarily had anything to do with bad business decisions, did it?
No, absolutely. And as an accountant, we've seen a lot of clients over the years get into trouble and have to become insolvent. And then even more so over COVID, we've seen a major increase in insolvencies. So the company is there to protect the directors from that. So there's good and bad. And all I've been saying about the social media gurus that are saying all this wild stuff is just get some advice. Talk to your accountant and say, well, okay, if I cancel my company structure, what are the costs? The accounting costs, the legal costs, the finance costs, tax costs, liability personally. Look at all of that. You might be in a position where it's okay. Say if you're a sole trader with a small turnover and you don't have any assets. Yeah, all right, cancel the company. But because you've got nothing to lose. But if you've got assets you want to protect, or you're earning good money and you don't want to pay 20% more tax, yeah, it's necessary evil.
So what do you do here? I know the deadline was the 30th of November. If you, first of all, weren't aware, and I know just from my own sort of group of people around me that also had businesses that were not aware straight up. So
Absolutely.
Maybe they hadn't spoken to their accountant yet, or for whatever reason, they just didn't know about it. But if you're in that situation now, we're in December, past that deadline, what do you do here?
So they have on the ARBS, Australian Registry of Business Services website, they've put a big banner last time I looked that said that the deadline is still 30th of November, but they're not going to take any action till I think it's the 12th of December. So you've got a bit of time to think about it. They've also said that you can apply for an extension of time. So I think that would be a really good step for people to take, particularly if everybody did it en masse. It's really going to throw a spanner in the works if everybody applied for an extension of time. And I think it's an absolute valid reason to have, for the reason you want an extension, is that you need to seek professional advice.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because that would be the wording that they would use back, isn't it? That,
yes.
Well, did you seek advice? So if you're saying, well, I need this extension because I wish to seek advice, that would make a lot of sense. And I suppose a lot of people wouldn't be able to get that advice till next year anyway.
Yeah, absolutely not till next year. And, perhaps they want to talk to an accountant, like someone like myself, that is sort of aware of both sides of the system. And yeah, I might be booked out for 6 months, so they might take a long time to get that advice.
Absolutely. And just sort of to wrap that up, that topic, I suppose, self-managed super funds, do they fall into this category as well?
Yes, if there is a corporate trustee of the self-managed super fund, which most accountants, I think all accountants recommend, and we still do recommend. So yes, it affects all the self-managed super funds.
Because I know that was an area that I was confused myself about, and others as well went, oh, I don't run a company, but hang on, you've got a self-managed super fund, so you do actually.
Yeah,
have to look at that.
absolutely. A self-managed super fund can be set up instead of the company. It can be set up with 2 or more personal trustees.
Right.
So you can get around the need for a company. And if you've got a company with your SMSF, we can restructure it and remove the company and put on 2 personal trustees. We don't recommend it.
Yep.
It's still a lot better to run an SMSF with a company.
Well, for
There's a
that'd
lot.
be similar reasons to what you said before, wouldn't it? For even
It's not so much the limit. It's not the limited liability for an SMSF.
Right.
What it is that an SMSF, if you've got personal trustees, needs 2 trustees at all times. So if one of those trustees wants to leave, then we have to restructure the entire SMSF. Very costly, $5,000 to $10,000 every time you change members. And think about it: how many relationships end up breaking down? How many people end up dying? So at some
Everyone
stage,
at some point. So yes.
at some stage, it is likely that an SMSF with personal trustees will need to be restructured once, twice, maybe more. If you've got the company trustee, very easy. It's a click of a button on ASIC. So once again, we do recommend the company trustee. If someone really opposes the director's identification number, we can restructure it to the personal trustees.
So I'd summarize all of that is there are ways around it, but you really need to know what you're doing. So
you need advice.
Yeah. And it's probably not as bad as what some people out there are saying, because it's not that full digital identity.
Exactly. I call it like pick our battles. Like, I still use my Medicare card. I'm not going to throw that away. So, you just got to weigh up the pros and cons. And if you decide that it's in your interest to get it, then you get it done and get it and carry on and have all the benefits of a company. If not, okay, we'll wind it up, but just beware of the costs and the taxes.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for all that discussion today, Cass. I'm sure, as always, our viewers find it really useful and refreshing to hear your take on the current state of play, because you're in the industry and you know what you're talking about there, as opposed to some of these others who are just trying to, like I said, clickbait you into knowing what's going on. This is actually our last Insights for 2022. So on behalf of myself and all the team at Ainslie, I'd like to wish all of our viewers and customers a very Merry Christmas and a safe and prosperous start to 2023. We'll be back in January to see where we're sitting with the markets and to explore further what the new year brings. But if it's anything like 2022, I'm sure there'll be lots to discuss. So thanks again, Cass, and hopefully we'll see you back here next year.
Definitely.
And we'll see everyone else back in January.
Okay, bye.
See ya.
Thanks so much, Cass, for being on the show. Thank you, Chris, and thank you to the audience for watching. Now, if you'd like to continue the conversation, head over to the Discord channel. That's discord.gg/gold. Chris will be there for the next 1 or 2 hours after the upload of this video. So head over there, ask your questions, get a response, and tell us your feedback, because we always want to hear from you. Of course, want you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Ainslie Bullion for the wide range of informational videos we post 5 days a week, including specials and much, much more. And while you're on the internet, you may as well head over to goldsilverstandard.com, because that's bringing gold and silver into the digital world. As we say here at the end, balance your wealth in an unbalanced world. Take care, and we'll see you next time.